is my first video. Welcome. So, I decided to start making ASMR because I have been listening to it recently and I noticed there was a dearth of these Kung Fu sessions. So I decided to start making ASMR videos because I am really into Kung Fu Cha, which is a special ceremonial way of making tea, and I've only seen a handful of videos on YouTube, and I haven't seen too many people doing them, and I think they are really relaxing, nice practice, and I want to share more of it with the world. And I happen to brew tea this way quite often. So this video is aimed at introducing you to Kung Fu Cha, which is another way of saying Kung Fu Cha, or expert way of brewing. Brewing in an expert manner. So, yeah, and I'm gonna just make videos with Kung Fu Cha. I got a lot of fun teaware to play around with, and I know a bit about tea. I'm a bit of a tea connoisseur, so I'm gonna also take you on a journey and try to teach you a little bit about tea, and we'll see where it goes from there. Maybe I'll branch out and do other things, like meditations, guided meditations. I'm not sure. We'll see how this channel's received. But right now, we're gonna start by brewing some tea. And today I have my purple clay yixing pot. And this is really good for brewing black tea and pu'er. Pu'er is a fermented tea. It's usually black tea most of the time. And it is pressed into these little cakes. I'm about to pull one out here right now. And they often come in these nice little paper wrappings, in these little cake disc shapes. And I'll kind of walk you through this in a moment. But if you want to take a look there, I really like this one because it has some nice sort of hot chocolate flavors to it, and it has this cute little monk on there. I don't know if you can see it too well, but it kind of looks like Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender. So we'll get started here. Now with the Kung Fu Cha, what you want to have is some way of catching the water. So here I have a bamboo tray. But if you're just starting out and you don't have something like this, you can use a plate and maybe something like some sort of grill or something that you can put over the plate, or just maybe an absorbent towel underneath. But the way I like to do Kung Fu Cha is very messy, and it involves a lot of rinsing and spilling water and tea. So we're gonna jump into this here. Now with This is probably best brewed with 212 degrees Fahrenheit water or 100 degrees Celsius. To make that more simple, it's fresh off the boil. So first, what you do is you take that water and put it in your vessel. That's nice. Now, the reason you do this is, for the most part, it's just to really heat up the vessel. Because it's been found that if you heat up the vessel, then once you pour the water in to steep the tea or brew the tea, there's less heat required to heat up the vessel, so it can focus on brewing the leaves. And that might just slightly alter the flavor profile. Of course, a lot of the stuff I will be jumping into with this style of brewing tea is gonna include a lot of sort of ceremonial meditative practices. Some of them help with making the tea taste better, and some are just kind of fun to do. But I think this one is a really good idea to start with. So here I've let the vessel heat up, and I can feel it from the outside. Another reason this is probably good, especially with yixing clay or a clay pot, is this pot is unglazed. So you don't want to take soap and water to this to clean it in between uses. And this will help sanitize the pot. So you might be wondering, what is yixing? What does that mean? Yixing is a type of clay from China that's been used for a long time now to make teaware, and it's been found to be really good for brewing tea because it's porous. So over time, this will soak in flavors from the tea on the inside of the pot, and eventually it will give back to the tea. In some cases, I've heard, this must be with really old teapots, but in some cases you can just put hot water in and it'll pull flavor out from the teapot, and you can drink that sort of flavored water. So I'm just pouring out the hot water here, and I'm gonna pour it into this little thing. This looks like a gravy boat, but it's not. It's called a gong dao bei in Chinese, which really means fair share cup, or a cup to share the tea fairly. And I've got my little teapot in the way here, but what you would usually do is you might have multiple cups lined up, and you would pour back and forth like so. At this stage, mostly to heat up the cups and clean them as well. And that's another thing too, is if you have a teacup that is made of clay, you don't want to take soap and water to it if it is not glazed. So the heating with hot water will be an important step. Of course, I have some Celadon porcelain cups here I'm going to drink out of, so I can clean this, but I mostly like to just rinse my teaware with hot water. I make sure all the tea leaves are out, of course, so mold doesn't grow in there, but I find just rinsing them is good with really, really hot water. And sometimes if you go into a tea shop that serves tea this way, you'll see they put them in these big round bowls, usually filled with boiling hot water, and that sanitizes the cup. But of course, if you're hosting people who maybe don't want your germs, use cups that you can clean with soap and water. I'm very excited for this tea. So, here we have our vessel, the teapot, Gongdao Bay or Fair Share pitcher, and then the cup that we're going to drink from. You might have noticed this little figurine. What is this here? This is called a teapot. Now, of course, this doesn't add to the flavor of the tea, but it's part of the meditative process. You can do Gong Fu without a teapot, but these have become popular over the years, and it's just a fun little decorative addition to the whole process. I really like this teapot because it's a cute little mammoth that is unglazed clay. So over time, this little guy is going to pick up some of the tannins as I pour over it, and he's going to start to look like a dark woolly mammoth. The shop that I bought this from has one that they use every day, and it's like as dark as this teapot. So that'll take some time for me to get to. Now, you saw me use this as well. This is just a little strainer. This one looks a little different than most because it's made out of a gourd. Usually there's these little metal things. I'll use one of the metal ones in a future video, but I really like this one because it balances on this cup well. So you're probably ready for me to introduce the tea, and I'm gonna do just that. So with tea cakes, what you want to do is unwrap it like so. And see, I've drank a little from this one already. It's a little bit of a half moon now, but usually they have this little dent in the middle, this little crater, and what you want to do is have a tool like this, and this is called a tea pick. Now, beginning, you would usually go from the inside of the crater and press in to break some of it off. But now that I've got it open here on the side, I am going to just kind of dig in here. Of course, I always recommend, just like handling a knife, pointing it away from your hand. So we're going to break a little bit more of this off. So you just kind of want to wedge it in there and break some of the leaves off. Of course, the point is not to break the tea up into a fine dust, because then it might infuse really quickly, and you don't really want that, because it might be really bitter. One of the reasons Gong Fu brewing is so nice is because it always incorporates the full leaf, pretty much, and with the full leaf you just get more of an even brew. The difference with Gong Fu is, as opposed to just brewing your regular loose leaf tea, you are using more tea to water ratio, so they're kind of closer in terms of the ratio. And what that does is it allows you to do shorter steeps, but you also get to extract more flavor. And with these shorter, more intense steeps, you can taste more nuances from the tea. Whereas if you brew it anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, or just let it sit in there like a lot of people do, I don't recommend that. If you do that in a cup or a pot for a long time, then all of those colors of the rainbow kind of get smashed together, and you can't taste the nuances. So that's one of the reasons I really recommend Gong Fu Cha. Bit of a mess, and with the microphone in the way, my dexterity's off, but I'm gonna break a little bit more off to drink here. There we go. So I just did a big no-no here, which is I put my paper right on my tea tray, which you don't want to do, because now I can't put this pu'er cake back in there. So we're just going to lay this off to the side. Okay, now we'll get our little setup back together. Are you ready to brew some tea? Alright. This little piece here is just a little wooden ring. It kind of helps guide some of the tea into the pot. It's nice to use when the mouth is really small. You wait long enough. Here we go. And I'm going to do a very short steep here, about 4 seconds. This first is actually not a steep. It's just going to be a rinse. Already the brew is really dark. nice little drink. And I'm gonna heat up my cup again. So here I'm putting the rinse of the tea in the cup. Some believe that this introduces the flavor of the tea to the cup. And here I have another one of my fun little tools. These are tea tongs, and usually what you would do is grab the cup and serve it to someone with that instead of directly touching the cup. It's just sort of a polite, sanitary way of serving someone. But these tools, these tongs, they also allow you to pour out the rinse when the cup is full to the brim with really hot water or tea, so you don't burn your little fingers. I'm used to handling hot things, so I think I can handle a bit more than most people, but I still have my limits. And this will be the first official brew that I taste. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. Give a little bit more to the mammoth. I think a lot of times people name their tea pets, and I haven't named any of mine yet. I'm welcome to suggestions. Give the mammoth some first there. So, this is the first cup. I'm gonna let this cool down just a little bit and maybe tell you a bit more about pu'er. So, pu'er is what's called a geographical indicator. The name tells you where it's from, but I think it's definitely more widely known as the tea than the little town in China that it hails from, where it got its name, pu'er. So this community was known for making this type of tea, and that's sort of how the name came about. And now other people produce it in other regions, but that's its origin. Pu'er spelled P-U-E-R-H. There are alternate ways of spelling it, such as P-U-E-R, and I think I've seen one other in the texts spelled P-U-E-R, I believe. It's also translated from Chinese to English as dark tea, which might throw you off because you might be thinking of black tea. But if you're into tea, you probably know this. If you're here to learn about tea, then I'm excited to tell you this. But in Chinese, they actually refer to it as black tea as red tea. So if you're reading a text and you're seeing the text refer to dark tea and red tea, the dark tea is the pu'er, or or fermented black tea, and red tea refers to what we call black tea, because it really is closer to red most of the time. And an interesting thing is, I was once working in a shop, and I heard some people speaking Spanish who referred to it as the black tea as te roja. I heard them use the word red in Spanish, and I thought that was interesting. So there's something about English, maybe we like to go a different path and call it something else, but I think in the English-speaking world we mostly call it black tea because of the color of the leaves. So it seems that China goes off the color of the liquid that you make, and English speakers seem to go off of the color of the tea. And here we're gonna have our first sip. There's one step I forgot to explain, which was why I was pouring the tea from such a high height. That process is called pulling the tea, and it's good for making a lot of noise. That's nice for ASMR, as well as causing a big mess, hence the tea tray. But it also cools down the tea, and it introduces oxygen to the tea. What that does is, what pulling the tea does is it makes it ready to drink quicker because you're cooling down the tea. But it's also been found that it's good to have oxygen in the water in the tea. So you want to, when you can, pull it, and also when you're drinking, if you can, you notice sometimes when people are tasting tea, they'll sip it really quick, like so. I don't like to sip it really quick like that, but some people do that so they can taste it across the tongue all at once, and the oxygen helps with tasting it, but I like to sip it in and then suck in air. I find that helps me more, and you might have seen people do this with wine tasting. That's nice. Now, another thing with the oxygen in the tea, the water, is it's advised against to use water that's already been boiled, because when you boil the water, the oxygen leaves, and if you boil it again, then it'll have even less oxygen in the water, and that could affect the taste of your tea. But it's up to you. You can see what works for you. I would just recommend using all of the water once you've heated it up. So this first video is mostly an experiment to see what works, what doesn't work. If you folks like just hearing me talk about tea, I'd love to hear that feedback. If you like the tea noises of me pouring the tea and such, I also would love to hear about that. And if you want to hear me play with the tea tools a bit more, I am also welcome to that. I'm not sure if the rubbing of clay on clay sounds very good. Maybe not. This has always sounded really fun to me. But now that I hear the intensity of it in the microphone, I'm not sure. So you let me know if I should not do this again. If this is like nails on a chalkboard, or if it's relaxing. I'm gonna give a little bit more to the mammoth. Missed it. Also give a little shout out to some of my favorite tea vendors. There's one that I bought this little guy from, if you're interested. And that one is called Chi Fine Teas in Portland. Chi spelled Qi, as in Qi, the living life force, or the number 7 in Chinese. But I'm pretty sure they're referring to the life force. And Kung Fu tea, or Kung Fu cha, and really the practice of brewing tea in general, Qi does come up a lot. A lot of these metaphysical terms that relate to spirituality. Tea's always been very spiritual, it seems. It seems to be no small coincidence that most of the cultures or practices that have cultivated meditation coincide with those that have cultivated tea. So that is an interesting note. I think they are related. It's known that if you look into the Buddhist texts, that tea is often used before meditation to help with concentration. Steeps, if you're using a little teapot or a gaiwan, which I'll show you probably in the next video, it's good to take the lid off of the vessel in between steeps so the steam doesn't continue to stew the leaves, because that could negatively affect the taste with your subsequent brews. I'm gonna try that again. Couldn't hear it very well. Ready? So if you're looking for a caffeine stimulant to assist in your meditation, I would recommend tea. I can get into all kinds of stuff later with caffeine content. In general, tea is going to have about a third the amount that you would get from coffee. But tea also has an important element called, it's not an element, but it's called L-theanine, and that helps balance with the caffeine. So it's slowly regulated into your bloodstream, and this helps you kind of reach those states that are really beneficial for meditation. With coffee, coffee doesn't have L-theanine, so it sort of punches your system really hard, and that's why you crash once you come down from it. So tea is good for kind of a slow rise and a gentle fall back into being sober from caffeine. I only really drink tea, so I think I am more sensitive to the effects of the different types of caffeine and levels of caffeine in different teas. But if you're a coffee drinker, you might notice it doesn't really do much for you. And that's probably because maybe you've built up tolerance. I'm going to try to steer clear of being any kind of authority when it comes to scientific things. I think caffeine has, to me, in my experience of working with tea, it's always been very subjective. And the reason that is because some people are more sensitive to caffeine inherently. Like myself, I've just noticed things like pu'er. I've read in books you should be able to drink it in the evening and fall asleep fine, but I notice it does sort of stimulate my mind and keep it awake when I try to lay down at night. But some people who are avid coffee drinkers might be able to drink pu'er at night because there is a very real effect of the more caffeine you consume, the more receptors you develop to catch the chemical that makes you sleepy, and caffeine sort of fits into those receptors. So caffeine's coming in, and your brain's saying, oh, I need to tell the body to get tired, so you develop more of these, and that's why people sort of, they have to keep consuming more caffeine to get to that heightened caffeine awareness state. I know that all sounds so technical and professional, but I assume since I don't drink coffee that often, I don't have that issue, which is why a little bit of caffeine goes a long way for me. But I'm okay with that. So I'm going to finish up this Gongdao Bay, and I'm going to continue to pull more steeps from this pot. With Kung Fu, Cha, especially with pu'er, you can pull a lot of brews from the same tea, and I would recommend that. Tea is one of those things that even if you're brewing it for a longer time, like 3 to 5 minutes for a full mug, it's good to re-steep it, because sometimes you can pull more flavor out, and it's just good to show sort of that respect for the farmers who work really hard to cultivate and harvest the tea. A lot of it is done by machines these days, but if you get your hands on the really good stuff, the high quality stuff, I always recommend re-steeping it. And once you think the leaves are spent, it's also good to put it in water in a jar overnight in the fridge, and you can pull some more flavor out. Maybe more so with green teas and oolongs rather than pu'er. I've never done it with pu'er, but I always do that with jasmine tea. Give a little bit more to the mammoth. So thank you so much for coming by. This is MrTeaASMR. Again, my name is Mikey, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to support me, please check out my Smashwords link in the video description below. And please go check out my book of poetry and the novel I wrote. And if you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment about what gave you tingles or what you enjoyed in this video. And I'll see you next time.